Have you been taking magnesium glycinate every single night, doing everything the bottle tells you to do, and still lying awake at 3 a.m. with your heart pounding and your legs restless? If that sounds familiar, I need you to keep watching, because what I'm about to share might be the missing piece you've been searching for. Magnesium glycinate has a reputation for being one of the gentlest, most effective minerals you can take. People reach for it to sleep deeper, to calm jittery nerves, to stop those maddening leg cramps at midnight, and to give their heart a little extra steadiness. And for a lot of people, it genuinely delivers all of that. But here's the part almost nobody talks about. There's one small everyday habit that can quietly flip magnesium against you. Instead of easing you into sleep, it can jolt you awake in the middle of the night. Instead of calming your chest, it can leave it feeling tight and your pulse racing. And the frustrating thing is, almost no one ever traces it back to the real cause. Most people blame their age. They blame stress. They blame just having one of those nights. They never once suspect that the supplement they trusted to help them is being sabotaged by something they're doing without even realizing it. The mineral isn't the problem. The way it's being taken is. I've spent time digging into why so many people who take magnesium consistently still feel like it's not working. And the pattern that keeps showing up is almost always the same handful of overlooked habits. Magnesium is involved in hundreds of processes that keep your body running smoothly, from muscle relaxation to heart rhythm to nerve signaling, to the depth of your sleep. When it actually reaches the cells that need it, the difference can be felt within days. But when it doesn't get there, your body doesn't stay quiet about it. It pushes back, and it pushes back hard. So today we're going to walk through the mistakes that quietly cancel out everything magnesium is supposed to do for you, counting down from the most common to the single biggest one that almost no one ever considers. If you've ever felt like magnesium just doesn't work for you, stick around, because by the end of this, you'll understand exactly why, and more importantly, exactly what to do about it. If you're watching right now, drop a comment. Also protective against fatty liver disease because it helps your liver actually process and export fat properly instead of letting it accumulate. Here's the uncomfortable part. Most people are not getting nearly enough of it. Choline is concentrated in foods like egg yolks, seafood, and organ meats like liver, foods that, frankly, a lot of people avoid these days, out of misplaced cholesterol fears. For most people, eggs end up being the main practical source, and even then, 2 eggs typically supply less than 2/3 of a day's requirement. On top of that dietary gap, research suggests roughly half the population carries a genetic variation that increases their choline needs even further, layered on top of the vast majority of people who already aren't hitting adequate intake through food. Put those two numbers together, and you start to understand why gallbladder issues are so widespread. A huge percentage of the population is walking around with a quiet, invisible vulnerability nobody ever mentions to them. Having a genetic predisposition doesn't guarantee you'll develop a problem. It simply means your body's threshold for choline is higher than average, so you have to be more intentional about reaching it. And certain lifestyle factors push that requirement even higher. Endurance exercise, high stress, regular alcohol consumption, and a diet heavy in processed food all increase how much choline your body burns through. If several OF those apply to you, it's worth paying particular attention to getting enough through diet, and if needed, through supplementation, ideally with guidance from a knowledgeable practitioner. So let's pull all of this together because by now you can probably see the through line connecting everything we've covered. A gallbladder problem is almost never really about the gallbladder in isolation. It's about the chemistry feeding into it, cholesterol concentration, estrogen balance, insulin, sensitivity, thyroid output, and choline status. Surgery removes the organ that was struggling to keep up with that chemistry, but it leaves every one of those underlying drivers exactly where they were. That's precisely why so many people report new or ongoing digestive symptoms years after their surgery. Bloating, irregular bowel habits, right-sided discomfort, or slow-building nutrient deficiencies that nobody bothers to trace back to a procedure that happened a decade earlier. If you're someone who still has your gallbladder and you're trying to avoid ever needing this surgery, the takeaway is fairly clear. Don't fear dietary fat outright. Keep an eye on blood sugar and insulin levels, pay attention to fiber intake to support healthy bile clearance, and make sure choline-rich foods are actually showing up on your plate regularly. And if you've already had the surgery, know that the symptoms you might be dealing with right now, the diarrhea, the constipation, the strange right shoulder ache, the fatigue that comes with fat-soluble vitamin shortfalls, these aren't things you simply have to accept as the new normal. There are practical targeted ways to support digestion without the organ that used to handle part of that job automatically, from fiber choices to enzyme support to working with a knowledgeable practitioner on bile replacement. None of this is meant to replace a conversation with your own doctor, especially if you're dealing with ongoing pain, unexplained weight loss, or symptoms that are getting worse rather than better. Those absolutely deserve proper medical evaluation. But armed with this information, you're in a much stronger position to have that conversation, ask sharper questions, and understand what your body might actually be asking for. If this connected some dots for you, maybe explained a symptom you've been living with for years without an answer, that's exactly why this kind of information needs to get in front of more people before they end up on an operating table without ever hearing it. Share it with someone who's had their gallbladder removed and still hasn't figured out why their digestion never quite went back. Keto normal. And if you want to keep learning how your body's systems connect together in ways your doctor's 10-minute appointment never has time to cover, stick around. There's a lot more where this came from. But when the moment finally arrives and you're ready to go, that loop is supposed to relax, the bend is supposed to straighten out, and everything should be able to flow through freely. Here's the problem. In a lot of people, particularly past the age of 50, that release simply doesn't happen the way it's supposed to. The loop stays tight. Stool. Arrives at that bend in the hose and physically cannot get through it, no matter how ready your body feels to let go. And here's where things quietly get worse the longer this goes unresolved. While that stool sits there waiting at the bend, your body doesn't pause its normal functions. The recta L wall continues pulling water back out of the stool, exactly the way it does throughout the entire digestive tract. Hour after hour, what could have passed through easily and comfortably becomes progressively drier, harder, and denser, until eventually it hardens into a firm, stubborn plug that refuses to move no matter how hard you strain against it. If any part of that description feels uncomfortably familiar, know that this is far more common than most conversations about digestive health ever admit. It's not a rare or unusual problem. It's simply a rarely explained one. So let's get into exactly what to do about it, starting with understanding why the instinct to push harder is actually working against you. It's also worth mentioning why this particular issue tends to stay hidden for so long. Bathroom struggles are one of the last truly private topics left, even between spouses of 40 years or old friends who share everything else about their lives. So people quietly adjust around it instead of addressing it directly, planning bathroom visits around their schedule, avoiding certain foods out of fear rather than actual necessity, or simply accepting the discomfort as an unavoidable part of getting older. None of that has to be the case once you understand what's actually happening mechanically. Straining is a trap, and understanding why changes everything. The natural instinct, when nothing is happening, is to push harder. But pushing doesn't open that loop. It tightens it further. Picture someone clenching a fist shut while you tell them to relax their fingers one by one. The harder they force the issue from the outside, the more that fist instinctively clenches in response. That's essentially what happens at the exit every single time you bear down forcefully. Your body reads the strain as a threat and responds by gripping tighter, which is the exact opposite of what you're trying to accomplish. So what actually causes this pattern to develop in the first place? A handful of everyday factors tend to stack up over time. Insufficient fiber intake is one. Inadequate water intake is another, often paired with the fiber issue in a way that makes both problems worse together. And then there's a habit that seems harmless in the moment, but compounds quietly over years, ignoring the urge to go when it first shows up, simply because you're busy in a meeting or in the middle of something else. We'll come back to why that particular habit matters so much. Certain medications play a meaningful role here too. Opioid pain relievers are well known for slowing this exact mechanism down. Iron. Supplements have a similar reputation. Some blood pressure medications can contribute as well. And simply getting older naturally weakens the pelvic floor muscles responsible for coordinating that release in the first place. All of these factors tend to accumulate with age layering on top of one another, which is exactly why this becomes so much more common after 60 than it ever was in your 30s or 40s. Now let's walk through the well-intentioned mistakes that I see people make over and over again. Mistakes made with the best intentions that end up quietly making the whole situation worse. The first mistake is pushing harder the moment nothing happens. Most of us were taught, without ever really questioning it, that straining is simply part of using the bathroom. So when things stall, the instinct is to bear down even more forcefully. As we just covered, that only tightens the loop further. It does not release it, no matter how much effort you put in. The second mistake is loading up on fiber without simultaneously loading up on water. Fiber works by pulling water into itself. That's the entire mechanism behind how it softens stool in the first place. But if you sharply increase fiber intake, while your fluid intake stays flat, that same fiber can behave almost like dry cement instead of a soft sponge. It becomes denser and drier, and it gets stuck at exactly that bend we've been talking about. If you're adding ground flaxseed, wheat bran, or a big increase in vegetables to your diet, you need to be increasing your water intake right alongside it. That part isn't a nice to have. It's essential to the whole strategy working at all. The third mistake is reaching immediately for a strong stimulant laxative, the kind that forces contractions higher up in the colon. Those products are built to push stool downward from above, but your problem isn't up there. It's stuck right at the door. Using a stimulant laxative in this situation is a bit like flooring the gas pedal while the parking brake is still fully engaged. You get cramping, urgency, and discomfort. But the stool sitting at the exit doesn't actually move because the muscle guarding the exit is still clenched shut the entire time. And the fourth mistake, arguably the most important one of all, is ignoring the urge when it shows up. Your rectum has a built-in reflex system. When it fills to a certain point, it sends a clear signal to your brain that it's time. If you consistently override that signal, telling your body, "Not now, I'm busy," the reflex gradually weakens over time. The rectum becomes progressively less sensitive to being full. Stool sits there longer as a result, dries out even further, and the entire problem compounds on top of itself, month after month, year after year. And let me know how long you've been taking magnesium, because I promise you're not the only one dealing with this. Let's start counting down. Mistake number 5 is timing your magnesium around meals that seem healthy but are quietly working against you. A lot of people take their magnesium glycinate right after dinner because it feels gentler on the stomach that way, and on the surface that seems like common sense. But the moment magnesium lands in a gut that's full of certain foods, its absorption can collapse almost instantly, and you would never know it happened. Here's the twist that catches people off guard. The foods most likely to interfere are the same foods you've been told your whole life are good for you. Whole grains, beans, nuts, seeds, spinach, beet greens, dark chocolate, and anything loaded with calcium all contain natural compounds that bind tightly to minerals passing through your gut. Imagine waking up every morning knowing there is a pair of silent, tireless powerhouses inside your body, quietly filtering through 50 gallons of blood every single day. That is roughly the volume of a standard bathtub, processed continuously through millions of microscopic pathways without you ever having to press a single button. Our kidneys work around the clock to sweep away metabolic waste, manage your body's delicate fluid levels, balance vital electrolytes, regulate your blood pressure, and even signal your bone marrow to produce fresh red blood cells. Yet, despite performing this monumental daily workload, these two bean-shaped organs rarely get the credit they deserve. In fact, most people never spend a single moment thinking about their kidney health until a routine blood test comes back with alarming numbers, or a doctor suddenly brings up words like renal function, filtration rates, or chronic disease. If you are over the age of 60, protecting these vital organs is no longer just a good idea. It is an absolute necessity. As the body ages, kidney function naturally undergoes gradual changes. When you combine natural biological aging with common midlife and late life health challenges, such as fluctuating blood pressure, insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, chronic mild dehydration, or years of taking over-the-counter pain medications, your kidneys end up bearing a massive burden. What makes kidney damage particularly subtle and dangerous is its absolute silence. In its early stages, renal decline almost never triggers sharp pain, obvious warning signs, or dramatic physical symptoms. It slips in undetected, quietly eroding your body's capacity to process toxins, while you go about your daily life feeling entirely fine. By the time noticeable symptoms like ankle swelling, metallic tastes, or persistent fatigue finally surface, a significant portion of kidney tissue may have already been compromised. Because of this silent progression, it is completely understandable why so many people rush to the internet looking for quick fixes, protective shortcuts, and natural cures. If you scroll through social media or watch health videos online, you will inevitably run into flashy claims promising that a specific green juice, a miraculous herbal tea blend, or a 3-day liquid detox can magically flush decades of toxins from your body, melt away kidney stones overnight, or fully regenerate damaged kidney tissue. These promises sound incredibly comforting, especially when you're trying to take proactive control of your long-term health. However, when we look at medical science, clinical research, and human physiology, the reality is far more straightforward and ultimately much more empowering. Here is the absolute truth that every senior needs to know. Your kidneys do not require fancy detox powders, expensive exotic supplements, or extreme liquid cleanses to function properly. They are already, by design, the most advanced self-sustaining filtration plant on Earth. They do not store up physical sludge that needs to be scrubbed out by a trendy potion. What your kidneys do need is a daily environment that supports their natural work, rather than forcing them to work under extreme stress. While no magic potion exists to instantly repair or reset your renal system, making smart, deliberate choices about the fluids you drink every day can make a world of difference. Proper hydration helps preserve healthy filtration rates, prevents structural damage caused by severe fluid drop-offs, and significantly lowers the risk of agonizing kidney stone formation over time. To truly safeguard your renal system for the decades ahead, you need to understand how common everyday beverages interact with your internal machinery, which ones offer genuine support, which ones require careful caution, and which daily habits are secretly draining your kidney health behind the scenes.